Our theme for this year's symposium is Thrive Together, Building a More Just and Sustainable Future. And in this spirit, what we eat matters. Plant-based meals like the ones covered today help the health of our bodies and our planet. So I'm very pleased to introduce our presenters. Monica Joyce is a dietitian, and Dr. Disha Narang is an endocrinologist, both with Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital. And together, they've launched an initiative called Culinary Medics, which promotes the importance of food for health. They're joined by Chef Catherine O'Meara of Heller Catering today. The program begins with some background on plant-based eating from Monica and Dr. Narang, and then we'll dive into the actual recipe with Chef Catherine. So feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box as we go along. We will wait to answer most questions until the end of the session, just to ensure that we have adequate time for everything. But with that, I'm very pleased to welcome Monica Joyce to take it away. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, it's exciting to be here and a pleasure to be here on behalf of the Brushwood Community Center this Saturday afternoon. Myself and my colleagues, Dr. Disha Narang and Chef Catherine O'Meara, are excited to talk to you about plant-based programs. So I'm going to spend the first 15 or so minutes and I'm going to review, I think, what I consider the importance of plant-based programs. As you know, they've grown in popularity in the past several years. The good news is there's science to support it. Dr. Narang is going to get a little bit deeper into that. And most important, I think it's a sustainable diet, one that almost any one of us can follow. It's also cool to be following a plant-based diet. There are celebrities like Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen, even Bill Clinton follow a plant-based diet. So that makes it fun too. So, okay, my next slide. So what is a plant-based diet? It's a diet limited in animal-derived foods in favor of plants with an emphasis on whole foods. I like to think of it as getting away from processed foods. A typical meal should be at least 50% non-starchy fruits and vegetables. So here's a time where more is better, and piling your plate with produce is really a good thing. For some, it may mean vegan or vegetarian. There are about 60 million vegetarians eating no meat, fish, or poultry. They may include eggs or dairy, and those are lacto-ovo. There's about 1 million vegans with 0 animal products. And then there's the flexitarians, and that word is a combination of flexible and vegetarian, mostly plant-based. They may include small amounts of meat and animal products, and probably that sort of happy middle ground between the vegan and vegetarians. It's an easy one to follow, and it's a good transition diet should you decide that you'd like to go vegetarian. And most of us registered dietitians encourage flexitarian type eating. My next slide. So let's take a look at some of the benefits of a plant-based diet, and we'll look at health benefits. Dr. Narang is going to dive a little bit deeper into the data, but as I said earlier, there's really a lot of good science lately that really supports this type of eating. There's less cancer and heart disease. There's a 22% lower risk of premature death from all causes and about a 42% decreased risk from premature death from heart disease. We've got avoidance of hormones and antibiotic exposures. And then weight loss, that's the arena that I spend a good part of my day in, and I'm always talking about fiber. Unfortunately, the average American probably gets about 10% of his ADA or his recommended daily requirements, which are about 25 to 30 grams for women and 30 to 35 grams for men. But what we know is that most plant-based foods are low in calories and high in fiber, and that fiber fills you up. It's that simple. If you fill a plate up with a lot of high fiber foods, you tend to be fuller sooner and in the end eat less. We've got environmental concerns, and we know that meat and poultry require a lot of land and water and resources and has a sizable carbon footprint. It's actually suggested that we replace at least one meal a week with a plant-based food, one meat-based meal, and that we can actually impact the environment. And then there's the animal welfare concerns that so many of us now have, cruelty to factory animals, hormones and antibiotics. And then as a big bonus, it's really budget friendly. My next slide. So let's take a step back in time and we'll go through plant-based diets through the years. Really some, I think, interesting data here. If we go all the way back to 500 BC, you see that already Orphic and Pythagorean took a philosophical stance against eating animals. They were also driven by the desire for longevity. very much like we are today. We'll leap to the 1400s. Leonardo da Vinci became a vegetarian, and then Benjamin Franklin in the 1720s decided to become a vegetarian. 1906, Upton Sinclair writes The Jungle, and that title actually depicted the horrific working conditions of factory workers in the meatpacking business. It was actually just 2 months after that was published that the new the Pure Food and Drug Act was implemented, and that was to went into effect to prevent the workers from working under these conditions. And then 1910, Seventh-day Adventist E.J. Fulton published the Vegetarian Cookbook. About 40% of Seventh-day Adventists today are following a vegetarian diet. 1970s, I was a nutrition major. I was in college. It was a fun time. There was really a focus on nutrition. Peter Singer inspired animal rights movement. And then 1992, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics formed the Vegetarian Nutrition Practice Group, simply due to really a growing interest. So the 70s, I think, began really sort of a focus on food and its place in our life in terms of health. Next slide. So who are the key players? So they're vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains, seeds, nuts, and they're packed with all sorts of nutrition: potassium, vitamin A, folate, fiber, vitamin C, magnesium, phytonutrients, antioxidants, omega-3s. I mean, these are foods just jammed with nutrition. Know, though, that only about 12% of Americans actually meet the recommended daily requirements for fruits, and about 9% of Americans meet the recommendation for vegetables on a daily basis. Next slide. And so let's take a look at legumes, our lovely legumes, and look at the variety we have. So we've got beans that are high in calcium, potassium, and zinc. Fresh peas, they're low in calories, often used in vegan protein powders. They're high in vitamin K and A and C. We've got garbanzo and fava beans, lentils, and then we've got soybeans, the quintessential plant protein that has all 9 essential amino acids. Next slide, please. And then we've got our glorious grains and our super seeds going back as far as 75,000 years. Quinoa, the mother of all grains, technically is a seed. It's prepared like a grain. It was sacred to the Incans, and it contains all 9 essential amino acids, and it's high in lysine, which is one of the amino acids that's often low in plant foods. Amaranth was sacred to the Aztecs. It's a super grain also, containing all 9 essential amino acids. We've got buckwheat, we've got spelt, an ancient wheat grain. We've got teff, which is actually made from an annual grass and is a gluten-free grain. And we've got sorghum, sustainably grown cereal grain. It's packed with fiber and antioxidants. I think it's important to know that over the years, the legumes were really the backbone of our diets, of our meals, and just gradually was replaced by meat. In fact, it's said that eventually it was thought that if you could replace your legumes, your grains, with meat, it was a sign of wealth and success. Next slide, please. And so we've got our super seeds also dating back as far as 75,000 years. What I love about the seeds is they're portable, they're easy to use, they can be sprinkled on smoothies in the morning, cereal, our yogurt, so you can use them in so many different ways. So we've got hemp seeds, which is a great source of protein, high in omega-3 and 6 fatty acids, again, easy to add to different dishes. Pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, which is a great source of vitamin E. Chia seeds, 3 ounces equals 6.5 grams of protein. Your reference point, if you think about it, an ounce of meat has about 7 grams of protein and about 11 grams of fiber. So if you can sprinkle some chia seeds on some high fiber cereal in the morning, like All Bran, that has somewhere between 11 and 13 grams and about a half a cup, you can meet about half of your daily recommendation for fiber by 1 meal in the morning. Also high in omega-3 fatty acids, and we've got flax seeds and sesame seeds. Next slide, please. And then plants do indeed have protein. I think that's one of the biggest concerns. It's one of the questions I get asked when my patients want to transition to a vegetarian diet. Will I reach my protein allowance for the day? But plants have protein. They contain 0 cholesterol. They're low in saturated fat. We've got our legumes, whole grains, seeds, tree nuts, and meat analogs we're going to take a look at in our plant protein isolate powders, which is a form of a very concentrated form of protein. Our next slide. And so let's take a look at the 10 best plant-based protein sources and what is our recommendation. So the adults need about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you have an example of a 150-pound person, about 68 kilograms, he requires about 54 grams of protein per day. And if you take a look at the list here, let's start with lentils. We've got 9 grams of protein per half cup, chickpeas 7 grams per half cup, and hemp seed 10 grams of protein and a mere 3 tablespoons. We got nutritional yeast down towards the bottom there, 8 grams of protein per 1/4 cup, and it's affectionately known actually as nooch, and it can be fortified with B12. Black beans, 10 grams of protein per 1 cup. Peanut butter, so if you make a nice peanut butter sandwich on some double fiber bread in the morning, you can jam some protein and some fiber together. We've got quinoa, 8 grams of protein per cup. So we see that many of our plant-based foods are really, really high in protein. Next slide. And let's take a look at meat analogs. They look, feel, and taste like animal meat, which is what their purpose is. They're a blend of plant-based proteins with flavoring, fat, and coloring, and their purpose is to replicate, look, and taste like animal products. I actually just had a patient yesterday who came in and she had the Impossible Burger. First time she had it, she didn't like it so much. She said, I got a bun, put some lettuce and tomato on it, and she said it tasted marvelous. So these are alternatives. Be aware though, they tend to be processed foods. Read the ingredient label. They can be very high in fat. They can be high in saturated fat, high in sodium. So I think it's important to read labels when we go beyond fresh foods. They tend to be, again, a blend of plant-based proteins with flavoring, fat, and coloring, and the purpose is to replicate and look and taste like animal products. And they're often made with wheat gluten, called seitan, which is a soybean derivative. Next slide, please. And how about milk? Let's look at some of the dairy alternatives. Dairy consumption has fallen about 41% from 1975 to 2018. That's about the last 43 years. There's really a variety of reasons. There's vegan ethics, ethnic cultures, lactose intolerances, and dairy allergies, taste preferences, environmental concerns, changes in breakfast habits. Most of my patients say they usually stop at Starbucks or Panera's on the way, grab something quick. I don't think people are sitting down having a bowl of cereal with milk anymore. And then, of course, we've got so many new alternative options. Next slide. So let's take a look at some of our non-dairy alternatives. They're made by blending nuts, grains, or legumes with water and then filtering out the solid so that we get that nice, smooth texture of milk that we're used to. Some brands use more additives than others, like the mock meats. I think it's really a good idea to label read. You can stand at the grocery. I did that the other day when I was shopping. I was looking at all the different cartons of non-dairy alternatives and reading the ingredients list. And the protein can vary, the fat can vary. So almond milk is typically lower in calories, but it's not very high in protein. We're going to see on the next slide. Coconut milk is higher in fat. Hemp higher in omega-3s. Oat provides fiber and iron, but it's low in protein. We've got rice milk, high in carbohydrates, and it's actually good for nut and soy allergies. And then we've got soy, which is higher in protein. And we'll take a look at those. We'll break those down on our next slide. So let's take a look at cow's milk. We've got about 5 grams of saturated fat, 8 grams of protein. And then if you look at the bottom, about 23% of the daily recommendation for calcium. Most of us, I think of cow's milk as high in protein and high in calcium. So if you run across, and we'll take a look at protein there, soy milk is pretty close to cow's milk with about 7 to 9 grams, oat milk only 2 to 4, coconut milk 1 to 5, and almond milk 1 to 4. And then the calcium can vary. Again, if you look at the label, you'll see that some of these are fortified with other nutrients, some are not, and so it's important to just make sure that you're getting what you're looking for, and it's usually protein and calcium when we're looking to replace milk. Next slide, please. So what are some of the common vegetarian myths? Myth 1, you need dairy products for adequate calcium. Well, you need calcium, vitamin D, and protein to form strong bones, and there's really a variety of foods available to do that. We've got a lot of greens. Now, you may have to eat a lot of them to meet the recommendation, but they are available. You can also look for fortified foods, like fortified orange juice now has vitamin D. There's plant milk, cereals. All of these are fortified. Again, label read first. Myth, eating spinach will provide enough calcium. Well, the oxalate in spinach and rhubarb decrease calcium absorption, even though it's a natural substance found in food. So you want to be careful there. And myth, if something is vegetarian or vegan, it's automatically healthy. Not so. So there's lots of foods, processed foods like cookies, chips, unsweetened cereal that can be free of animal products, but they're also high in sugar and, of course, often calories, even the frozen veggie burgers. So again, things that are processed and high in sodium and fat are really, not what you're looking for. So read labels. And then finally, you need foods with complete protein to meet your protein intake. Not so. The body is pretty smart. So it has a pool of amino acids that it can draw from in order to put together all the needed proteins that we need for the day. Next slide, please. And so bugs. Here's some two of my favorite slides in the bunch. They're here, there, and everywhere. Entomophages. There's over 200 edible insects that they're crawling all over the world. And interestingly enough, you do some reading in cultures like Asia, Africa, and Central America, they've been eating them for years. They're low maintenance, so they're environmentally friendly. They can be packed with oxidants, antioxidants. They've also got protein. They're high in minerals like iron, zinc, and magnesium, and they're more sustainable and environmentally friendly. Next slide. So let's take a look at the best of them. So here's the best of the bugs. So crickets, 2 tablespoons have got about 50 calories, 6 grams of protein. They increase probiotic growth. That's a good thing. And there's a company called Exo that makes protein bars, I'm told, are pretty good. Mealworms larvae are 50% protein and 30% fat. You can broil, fry, roast, or steam if you're adventurous. And then there's termites, rich in minerals, including magnesium, and they have up to 100 times the mineral content of other insects. And then grasshoppers, you've got to remove the wings and the legs. But they actually taste similar to seafood, I'm told, such as shrimp, and they have 5 times more antioxidants than orange juice. Next slide, please. So making it easy. Interestingly enough, what I read was the biggest hurdle for most people to incorporate a plant-based diet is the perception of time. Everyone thinks that it's just going to be way too time-consuming to start cooking fresh unprocessed foods. And sometimes I remind my patients, especially through the pandemic, when people have been ordering in rather than going out, is by the time maybe the family reviews the menu, the order is placed, you wait for the food or you go pick it up and you sit down to eat it. You probably could have made a nice plant-based dinner. The good news is I've got a lot of patients who have sort of dived back into the kitchen and are cooking again. But you may want to start with substituting a plant protein in place of an animal-based protein once a day and gradually increase. Or even start with once a week. You can use beans, quinoa, nuts, cubed tofu or lentils for fiber and protein. You can throw them into a salad or make them as a side dish. Vary the grains. The grains and seeds are easy. They're fun. You can get adventurous. Try quinoa, barley milk, some of the ancient grains. We've got the flaxseed we mentioned earlier and all the different seeds that you can just sprinkle on things and add for flavor and for protein and antioxidants. And then fruits, of course. Everyone asks me, well, why do you have fruit for your snack? I say, because they're portable. They'll go with you anywhere. We're just coming out of summer with all these wonderful fruits. Great time of year to be talking about fresh produce as we harvest the benefit of summer. You can use nut butters, hummus, avocado in place of butter, mayo, and cheese. And then try nutritional yeast for a cheese-like flavor. It can be sprinkled on so many different foods. So B12 is the only required nutrient not found in plant-based foods, plant-based diets. You may need a supplement if you're vegan, but know that a lot of foods are now fortified with B12. Next slide, please. And this is really our wrap up here. So here's some takeaway points, and I love on the side the graphic. We only have one planet Earth, so eat like you live here. But I think there's many good reasons, and Dr. Narang is going to get into the science behind the health reasons for swapping out some animal products with plants. Whole food plant-based diets are similar to our natural ancestral eating patterns, and they can be diverse, balanced, and complete. They do offer high-quality protein. They're packed with a lot of different nutrients, and there's a wide variety of dairy-free milk should you decide to not drink whole milk with very nutritional profiles. I think it's important also to be a label reader. I think the good news, too, is that Americans seem to be getting the message. There's about 31% of us trying to incorporate more plant-based foods into the diet. The choices have grown remarkably over the years. So from 2012 to 2018, the variety of products available has increased by 268%. So whatever your reason, whether it's health, being kinder to animals, reducing the carbon footprint, or you simply want to be cool, we invite you to shift to a plant-based diet. Know that I think it's easier than ever. May require a little bit of an adventurous spirit, but we think you'll enjoy it and embrace it. And I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Disha Narang. Thank you.
Hi there. I am going to share my slides. All right, so I am going to continue talking about plant-based diets and talk about why, what's all the hype. So I'm going to discuss the clinical evidence behind plant-based diets. And I just want to preface this that this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could talk about this for hours. There's so much data to support this. So I'm just going to feature a few studies and happy to answer questions afterwards as well. Okay, so I'm going to start out with this quote that, a lot of us live by in the clinical world. Let food be thy medicine, and thy medicine shall be thy food. And I think that really encompasses why a plant-based diet is actually so important. So we've got so many diets out there, right? Every day we hear about a new diet, and oftentimes they're just fads. The keto diet, the paleo, Atkins, South Beach, the juicing diet, all of it. And honestly, it's really, really overwhelming. And I think people have a really hard time figuring out, well, which one's the right one. So let's just talk quickly about the categories of various diets. So a vegan is a person who does not eat or use animal products such as meat, dairy, and eggs. A vegetarian is someone who does not eat meat. Someone who eats a raw diet eats only uncooked and unprocessed foods. A person who eats paleo eats mainly meat, fish, vegetables, and fruits, but does not eat dairy, grain, or processed foods. A pescatarian is a person who does not eat meat, but does eat fish and shellfish. And someone who follows a keto diet is a person that eats a high-fat, moderate protein, and extremely low carbohydrate, less than 20 grams diet. So plant-based does not equal vegan. So vegan is a term coined in 1944 by Donald Watson, who was an English animal rights activist and founder of the Vegan Society. So this is a person who avoids using animal or animal products or animal-derived foods for ethical reasons, and now that's been expanded to environmental and health concerns. And the definition from the Vegan Society is that this is a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So this is truly a lifestyle where people incorporate this into their diet, their medications, entertainment, their home, their furniture, so just their whole lives. Plant-based, on the other hand, was introduced by Dr. T. Colin Campbell in the 1980s, and this embraces a low-fat, high-fiber, vegetable-based diet, and that focuses on health and not so much ethics. So going into some of the studies featuring why this is such a good thing, this was a study called Healthful and Unhealthful Plant-Based Diets and the Risk of Coronary Heart Disease in American Adults. They had about 73,000 women from the Nurses Health Study from 1984 to 2012. 92,000 women from the NHS2, that was from 1991 to 2013, and about 43,000 men in the health professionals follow-up study. So a huge cohort of participants in this, and all of them were free from chronic diseases at baseline. So there's 3 versions that they categorized in this study. One was a plant-based diet index, and that included consumption of all plant food while reducing animal food intake. Healthful plant-based diet index, which included healthy plant foods associated with improved health outcomes. I want to emphasize that not all plants are created equal, and positive scores in the study were assigned to plant foods and reverse scores were assigned to animal foods. So a higher adherence to healthy plant-based diet was inversely associated with coronary heart disease. So basically, a healthful plant-based diet was associated with coronary heart disease. unhealthy plant-based diets and animal are both associated with coronary disease. So I'll show you in the next graph. So both animal food and less healthy plant foods had the same risk for coronary heart disease, whereas plant foods had a much lower risk for coronary heart disease. And we look at this red arrow, same thing. The plant-based diets and the healthful plant-based diets had a much lower risk for coronary heart disease, whereas the unhealthy had a much higher curve. So looking at all these foods, these are all vegan snacks, right? The Chex Mix, Pringles, Sour Patch Kids, all of it's vegan. So not sure if that's really healthy though. So I think, you know, the important thing is leafy greens, is fries of some broccoli and a vegan cookie. This is, of course, highly processed, lots of additives, added sugar, and less nutrients, whereas the right side is a whole food ingredient full of vitamins and minerals and more nutritious. So we are looking at, you know, really emphasizing if we're going to be, you know, eating more vegetarian, more plant-based, we're not looking at processed foods, but more kind of whole foods and less processed. And the reason why this is so important is that Americans tend to eat a lot less of what would actually be recommended, like vegetables, dairy, fruit, oils, grains, and proteins. They traditionally eat too much of processed foods, including added sugars, saturated fats, and sodium. And so that has led to about 2/3 of Americans being overweight and obese. And so that's why we care so much. So the definition of this, though, is a spectrum. You can be 100% plant-based, you can be mostly plant-based, or this is incorporated and adapted to many other dietary approaches like the DASH diet, Mediterranean, paleo, low carb, and the list goes on. So again, this is not an emphasis that, you know, you've got to go completely vegan or plant-based, but any incorporation of plants or vegetables into your meals leads to an overall healthier outcome. So a shift towards plant-based, plant-centered diet from young to middle adulthood, that has shown actually a decrease, about 48% lower risk of type 2 diabetes by middle adulthood, in addition to lower weight. And so that has allowed, and this study actually did allow for some lean meats and low-fat dairy. But the point here is that the earlier we introduce a diet high in vegetables, the lower risk we have in developing type 2 diabetes and overall obesity later in adulthood. So really this starts with families, this starts with exposing our kids earlier to vegetables and what that really means in terms of incorporating that into their day-to-day diets. So looking at this slide from the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association, this was a guideline released last year on primary prevention of cardiovascular disease. So plant-based diet and Mediterranean diets have consistently been associated with a lower risk of all-cause mortality than control or standard diets. Trans and saturated fats have been associated with a higher risk of total and cause-specific death. And sugar and artificially sweetened beverages, fried foods, processed meats, refined grains such as, you know, white bread, white pasta, increased type 2 diabetes development and coronary events. A dietary sodium reduction was found to reduce blood pressure and cardiovascular events in the DASH trial. Sodium above 2,000 milligrams a day, which is about 1 teaspoon, red meat over 14 grams a day, processed red meat and sugar-sweetened beverages were associated with cardiovascular death. And replacing animal protein with plant protein was associated with a reduced cardiovascular mortality rate. So this was the EPIC Oxford study. This was one of the largest studies of vegetarians in the world. They focused on diet and lifestyle characteristics of 4 groups: meat eaters, fish eaters, vegetarians, and vegans. Vegetarians and vegans in this study had a significantly lower all-cause mortality than regular meat eaters, although there was no overall heterogeneity of risk between diet groups. The other interesting finding was that men and women had a lower BMI in both the vegetarian and vegan categories than fish eaters and meat eaters. So vegetarian dietary patterns and mortality in the Adventist Health Study 2. There's another study, so 73,000 Seventh-day Adventist men and women with a follow-up of about 5 to 6 years. Diet was assessed at baseline by a quantitative food frequency questionnaire and categorized into 5 dietary patterns. And that included non-vegetarian, semi-vegetarian, pesco-vegetarian, lacto-ovo-vegetarian, and vegan. So vegetarian diets were found to be associated with lower all-cause mortality and with some reduction in cause-specific mortality. And so that included cardiovascular, non-cardiovascular, renal, and endocrine. And then results actually in this study were more robust in males. This next study looks at the Lyon Heart Study. So this showed decreased saturated fat and cholesterol with an increase in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, showed a significant lowering of blood cholesterol level and cardiovascular disease risk. So what this study did was a randomized controlled trial that tested the effectiveness of a Mediterranean diet on coronary recurrence rate after a first myocardial infarction, which is a heart attack. And so this Mediterranean type diet contained more bread, root vegetables, green vegetables, more fish, fruit at least once a day, less red meat, and that was replaced by poultry, and then margarine that was supplied by the study to replace butter and cream. And the control diet was a diet more comparable to that consumed in the US. So this showed that despite a similar coronary risk factor profile where patients or participants had similar plasma lipids and lipoproteins, blood pressures, body mass index, and smoking status, the Mediterranean style diet had a 50 to 70% lower risk of recurrent heart disease. And that meant cardiac death and non-fatal heart attacks and proceeding and unstable angina, stroke, heart failure, and pulmonary or peripheral embolism, and all of these measures plus the events that required hospitalization. So basically what this means is that making changes that are more plant-based, which included legumes, breads, vegetables, and fruits, improved outcomes. And so another study, similar randomized control trials, showed that there was a notable comparable cholesterol panel for red and white meat. So that was interesting as well. So legume consumption, and Monica had touched on that briefly. So legume consumption, or this study reviewed the association between dietary legume consumption and cardiovascular disease risk, including coronary heart disease and stroke. A higher legume consumption was associated with a 10% decreased risk of coronary CVD and coronary heart disease, in addition to lipids, and it showed improvement in vascular function and insulin sensitivity, also associated with longevity. And legumes are a great source of antioxidants, fiber, mono and polyunsaturated fatty acids, and vegetable proteins. So let's switch gears. I want to talk about mental health and plant-based foods. So depression, 8% of Americans over age 12 experience depression, and that creates obstacles, of course, to accomplishing tasks and contributing to chronic disease, and it worsens existing comorbidities. So it's linked to inflammation in the brain and chemical imbalances, neurotransmitters, and elevated levels of monoamine oxidase breaks down serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, all of which help to regulate mood. So evidence suggests that dietary changes can improve mood and quality of life. The Nutrition Journal reported more positive moods than meat eaters, and the British Journal of Psychiatry looked at about 3,500 participants over five years, and participants eating whole foods noted fewer symptoms of depression versus those eating processed foods. Looking at inflammation and mood. So from the plant-based category, plants are, of course, high in antioxidants and phytochemicals, and this helps to repair the damage and decrease inflammation in brain cells. So this helps to restore balance of neurotransmitters, and quercetin, a phytochemical that's found in plant foods that inhibits monoamine oxidase, and that increases serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine in the brain. And that's actually very, very similar to the mechanism of action that antidepressants do for folks as well. Looking at plant-based or animal-based, arachidonic acid is a fat found only in animals, and that's a precursor to inflammatory chemicals in the body. And so that increase in inflammatory mediators in the bloodstream causes general inflammation, heightened immune response, and that leads to anxiety, stress, hopelessness, and depression. omega-3 fatty acids, and mood. So looking at the plant-based category, alpha-linoleic acid, ALA, is converted by the body to EPA and DHA. Omega-3 fatty acids come from fatty fish, like salmon, and healthy EPA and DHA fats, and looking at unhealthy fats. Dietary EPA and DHA intake couldn't compensate when the studies for the more harmful effects of arachidonic acid, cholesterol, and fat. And so looking at this, there was the study that this is referring to was presented about 10 years ago to 3 groups looking at regular intake of animal products, a fish group, and then a vegetarian group. And that lasted only 2 weeks, but the vegetarian group had statistically significant improvements in mood scores on the depression and anxiety stress scale. The fish group increased their intake of omega-3s, but the arachidonic acid levels actually remained higher than those eating a vegetarian diet. So mood scores actually showed no significant change from baseline in the fish eaters versus vegetarian. And going back to the Seventh-day Adventist study, despite lower intake of omega-3 fats because they were vegetarian, the EPA and DHA in their diets, the Adventists following vegetarian diets reported more favorable mood profiles than those who were non-vegetarian. And so these are just some examples of foods with omega-3s, high in omega-3s. Looking at serotonin and mood. So plant-based, so tryptophan becomes converted to serotonin, and that's the neurotransmitter responsible for feelings of happiness and well-being. Plant-based proteins plus complex carbohydrates, which include vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes, have enough serotonin production to maintain feelings of well-being. So meals rich in carbs promote an increase in insulin production, and that allows muscles to absorb competing amino acids, and that makes it easier for tryptophan to actually cross the blood-brain barrier, and that increases serotonin levels in the brain. That explains the association between depression and carb cravings. A diet high in protein and animal foods that actually limits serotonin production. So the body actually has difficulty converting animal-based tryptophan sources like turkey into serotonin due to that competition from other amino acids entering the brain. And so those levels of serotonin are much lower. And so some plant-based foods that are high in tryptophan include leafy greens, sunflower seeds, watercress, soybeans, pumpkin seeds, mushrooms, broccoli, and peas, in addition to all of these presented here. So in conclusion, so again, this is not meant to be a blanket statement or recommendation for everyone, but we can all benefit from eating less processed foods, less meat, and more whole foods. So, you know, the other important thing, and Monica mentioned this as well, is keep an eye on marketing and labeling to make sure that foods that are advertised as healthier, are they actually healthy? So again, like going back to vegan snacks, like Oreos are vegan, Fritos are vegan, but not necessarily healthy. And again, we don't necessarily ascribe to one diet over another. Even with my patients, I am all about balance and sustainability. If you are able to convert one meal a day or even every few days to more vegetables, you are going to be healthier than you were when you were eating all meat meals. So any little bit of incorporation is going to be beneficial. Obviously there are extremes in both cases, but I think the point here is that eating plants makes you healthier. And so just a little meme for vegans, what my friends think I do, what my mom thinks I do, what society thinks I do, what meat eaters think I do, what I think I do, and what I actually do. And lastly, there's no diet that will do what eating healthy does, so skip the diet and eat healthy. Thank you so much for listening, and I will turn it over to Catherine for her cooking demo.
Open the video. Hello. Okay. Is the screen showing our setup here?
Yes, it is. You look good, Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'm Chef Catherine. I've owned Heller Catering for 17 years, and I am here with Jackie, who just finished her degree in nutrition, and Chef Henny. They have both been with me since day one. I think Jackie was 15 or 16 when she started working with us. So anyway, we are going to do a vegan dish today. And I'm not a vegan, I'm not a vegetarian, I'm a pescatarian. Every once in a while, I'll take a bite of meat, but I am kind of swaying to some of these wonderful vegan recipes that I am finding, and everything is from scratch. Now, if you have a copy of the recipe, it looks a little daunting, but most of you probably have all these components, with the exception of the hing, in your cupboard. So it's just a matter of measuring them out, putting them aside. When you get home, after you've soaked your beans the night before, you put it all in a pot and you cook it. And I think Dr. Narang also mentioned to me that we could do this in a, like a crock pot. So it is made with mung or mung beans, however you wish to pronounce it. And we use everything vegetarian. So this is what the beans look like. They're just really hard little guys. And if you sprout them, I'm told that you get a whole new set of nutritional components. So what I do, and this is about the third or fourth time I've made this recipe, is I have 1 cup of my beans, and I just make sure it covers, my water covers the beans, and then I put some cornstarch in there. Baking powder, I'm sorry, with this cute little spoon that Jackie brought back from Africa. I love it, it's adorable. And you just stir it up, and then you put a piece of plastic over it. I did mine last night, and I boiled them for 20 minutes this morning, and then we are ready to go in our pot. And this dish comes together rather quickly. The spices that we are using: whole cumin seed, cloves. You can use either the whole seed or the powder, whichever you might have in your cupboard. Turmeric, coriander, the hing, some cinnamon. You can use powdered cinnamon. You can use the whole cinnamon stick, of which we did. We threw it right in the pot. And then you're going to boil that for about 20-30 minutes, and it's done. I took it a step further because I always do that. I'll take a recipe and think it needs something a little sweet in there. So I diced up sweet potatoes, tossed them in avocado oil, salt, pepper, and a touch of cayenne. So we have these already on the back of the stove. They're already in the soup. And then last, after you pull the soup off the stove, you are going to add your lemon juice and some kind of sugar. We are using coconut sugar. I steer away from anything white or refined on every spectrum. I just like natural, whole components and organic. And then we're going to stir in the potatoes. So we're going to stir in some cilantro, and then I'm going to top it. We made a plant-based sour cream. I don't have a recipe out there for this because I just decided to try this morning. And it's made with cashews, lemon juice, lime juice, a little water, and you just blend it until it's very, very, very creamy. And when I finished it, it took on the color of the cashews. But the longer it sits, the more white it turns because of all the acid in the dish. These are all the things that we used. I used these red peppers. They are a little bit spicy. You can make the dish as spicy, or you don't have to add peppers at all, because I've got the cayenne on the sweet potatoes. And then we've got the cilantro. A lot of people have a love-hate relationship with cilantro. I love it. To me, it smells clean, soapy. I just love it. And then, of course, an organic sweet potato. So I think Jackie wanted to talk about the difference between the sprouted and the beans that we use that we just soaked overnight, what the nutritional difference was. Not to take anything away from Dr. Narang or Monica, but she was telling me, and I thought, that's really fascinating.
Hi, everyone. So this bean is a nice plant-based source of protein. It's very high in protein, vitamins, and minerals, and in fiber. And when it's sprouted, there's less calories and more antioxidants than in the whole form, but eating it in the whole form is just as fine.
Okay, and you know, you could soak it for just an hour. You could soak it when you go to work in the morning, and it's good to go. So there's no reason to soak it overnight. I would have never attempted this, but I was watching a chef on YouTube, and it just looked so delicious and so healthy. She just kept saying, my body keeps thanking me for this. And then I made it and I ate it. I felt a difference. I really did. I did not feel bloated or heavy. I just felt like my body was saying, thank you. You've done something really wonderful for me, for my insides. And we don't take care of us. Who's going to take care of us? You know, I want to be self-sufficient. When I'm 90, I don't want to have to rely on somebody feeding me or telling me what I should or should not eat. And then I think Catherine had asked me just to talk about a salad to serve with the dish. And it's something very, very simple and light. We did some arugula, and I put some sunflower seeds on it and some dried cranberries. You can do a dressing of your choice. You can use a balsamic vinegar. You could use a rice wine vinegar and mix that with an avocado oil and a little bit of maple syrup. Vegans, if we're talking vegan today, some will eat honey and some won't. So whatever your preference is. I like to make recipes with both. I like my maple syrup and I like my honey. And then for dessert, again, we're keeping it very light and fresh. And we did a coconut plant-based ice cream, and we're going to put a little mango sauce on it. So this is very, very, very filling. Okay, so this starts the dish, kind of cleanses your palate. This is very filling and warming, great for winter. And then just finishing it up with just a light touch of a coconut ice cream. And this is made with coconut milk, duh. So enjoy. If you have questions, please let us know and we will do our very best to answer them. And I could not have done this without these two.
Well, I'm gonna just say the mango ice cream, let's just pretend that this is a mango lassi, which is the most popular dessert in India. So, and just a little firm version.
You want to put that right here? So what else is in a lassi?
Mango lassi had a yogurt normally, yogurt, fresh mango, touch of cardamom, and touch of vanilla.
Sounds delicious.
Ice.
Okay, our next cooking show is going to be about plant-based sour cream. And this really does. Did you taste this? I need somebody to taste this. And look how thick it is. And I don't have measurements for it. You just have to watch your water content because you don't want it runny. You want it to be a sour cream consistency.
Oh, it's divine. It is divine.
First time she's tasted it. First time I've made it.
Divine.
So this is a fun adventure for me and for the two of us, and we're loving it. So I think we're gonna say thank you so much for joining us, and we're gonna eat this soup.
All right, we have a few questions coming in here. We have someone asking for clarification on the hing spice, Catherine. If you could just recap on the hing, please.
Am I live? This is what it looks like when I went to an Indian food store to buy it. I kept saying, I need some hing, I need some hing. And the guy was looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, it comes in a little jar, it's powder form, and you mix it in a soup. And he said, oh, hinga. So I guess Dr. Narang tell us about that G on the end of the word. But this, I think, I'm told, is a substitute for garlic and onion. And it also, the guy that I purchased it from, he said it's very soothing on the stomach. And it's a big, big ingredient in Indian cooking, as are mung beans, and all of these spices. Very aromatic.
It really tastes like a celery if you, it's just like celery. It's a family of celery and very mild.
It does have a bitter, if you just taste the mung, it has a little bit of a bitterness on the back of the throat, but it tastes like celery. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. We have another question asking about the sugar in recipes. With the coconut sugar that you used, is that a 1-to-1? Is that basically the same ratio for coconut sugar as for cane sugar?
I use the same ratio. Yeah, I don't use white refined sugar at all. Sometimes I'll use cane sugar, but I'm experimenting with different sugars, and I'm finding that there's so many more nutritional elements about the different sugars rather than the sugars that have been chemically processed.
So here is the,
Here's the coconut sugar. And if you have an allergy to coconut, you probably want to find a different sugar. Do you know of any other sugars? A cane sugar, pure organic cane sugar would be good. There are many out there. None come to mind to me right now, but I'll figure it out and let you know on the next class.
Great. We had another question for Disha and Monica. And that one was related to, all of the discussion about lowering carb intake and how you balance eating a low carb diet with a plant-based one, knowing that some plant-based foods, you're thinking about beans, legumes, are higher in carbs.
I'll let Monica actually answer more of this, but the reason why it's possible is because understood that beans and legumes have more carbs than obviously a vegetable or an animal protein. However, those carbs, it's a much higher fiber content. So let's say if you're looking at your blood sugars, if you eat a piece of bread versus, a bowl of beans, your blood sugar with the bread will spike extremely high, whereas with the beans, even though it has carbs, because of the high fiber, your blood sugar will not spike as much. And so I would almost quote it as a good carb. But Monica, if you want to kind of delve into that deeper.
I think it's a tricky question, and I think what Dr. Narang said is correct. So much of the carbohydrate is high fiber. These are very high fiber foods when you think about it. 7-8 grams of fiber in a serving often. Even whole grain bread that we think of as high in fiber has only usually 2 to 3 grams. But I think, and because in our daily practice where we're specialists in diabetes and obesity, we have people coming in selecting usually, and I think it's a trend now. When we talk about sustainability of diets, the keto diet, intermittent fasting, but really sort of an anti-carb approach to eating. Without a doubt, and I always ask patients, well, how many grams of carbs do you want to include in the diet? Some people are down. Yesterday, somebody as low as 25 grams a day. So for practical purposes, I don't think you're going to be able to embrace what I would call this plant-based diet, because at the end of the day, you've got far more than 25 grams of carb per day in there. And I think the big question really for us is sustainability. Most of those patients that go on these keto diets start to miss things. You eliminate so many foods when you really eliminate carbs from the diet, and of course so many nutrients, B vitamins, etc. So I just say, well, how many grams of carb do you want to take in a day, and sort of find that happy medium so that they can be enjoying some of these plant-based foods. You would be surprised at how many foods are eliminated when you lower the carbs that low. As I said, I had somebody yesterday, we did a detailed diet history. And, you know, breakfast is, you know, an omelet in the morning and there's no toast, there's nothing, no fruit with it and so on. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's very helpful. So also just to clarify for everyone, we can send the slides out that Monica and Disha shared earlier. I know they were jam-packed with information, and many people were really interested in seeing those again. So we will send those out. This session is also being recorded, so you will be able to watch this again or refer to the conversation again as well. The other question we had coming in here, do you recommend any specific cookbooks or apps with meal ideas for a family looking to move more toward plant-based eating?
Follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, 100%. Disha has a great Instagram.
But there is actually lots of fun people on social media and it's amazing how much content is out there. And so I mean, once in a while, like every couple times a week, I'll post you know, a recipe, especially because I think it's helpful for my patients to see you know, like practicing what I preach, but also as examples, because I think it's easy to get into a rut in terms of what to cook, how to eat, and bringing various ingredients together. And so there's lots and lots of fun blogs on social media, and I think it's just about kind of looking into what's out there. And I mean, there's, you know, people who do a lot of low carb, there's people who do plant-based, there's people who do vegan, and it's like, I think it's really, really inspiring to get ideas from all those folks. So I think, Catherine, if you have specific cookbooks, that would be super helpful as well.
Well, I'll tell you how I got into the vegan craze, because I don't think I ever would, because I've tasted so many vegan foods that just are not good. I found a chef on YouTube. If you're interested, her name is Chef Cynthia Louise. She's very colorful, and she does the most amazing vegan recipes. She's from Bali, and I would love to just go there and just work with her for a couple of weeks. So her plus following Dr. Narang, you've got a good basis.
Wonderful. Well, this is great. Thank you so much to the three of you for bringing your talent and unique perspectives to this. Very informative. We are going to go ahead and wrap it up, unfortunately, but I know that with the slides, we can also send out your contact information for each of you in case folks have follow-up questions. Disha and Monica are always so willing to answer those. And we're so grateful to you, Catherine, as well, for sharing your recipe and talent. We'll send out the recipe again as well. Yeah, and thanks to your whole team too. That's amazing. Bravo. Just a reminder to everyone that we are hosting the symposium this Friday, the 9th at 7 p.m. So it's a different time than most of our other presentations, but you can sit back, relax, and enjoy. It should be very entertaining. Bill Curtis and Donna LaPietra have been helping us put together a really lively program with our honorees, Bill McKibben and Sue Halpern. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. Before we sign off, I'm going to just launch a quick poll here, if you don't mind filling it out. It's just 3 questions asking about today's event to give us a little feedback. And if you can just take a minute to reply to those, that would be super helpful.
Is it not clicky?
Perfect. Yep, folks are, let's see, we've almost got, it's cool. It tells me how many people have filled it out. 70%. Great.
Box, go on the word. See if that works.
It's not working.
Oh, panelists, unfortunately, are unable to take it. But
Thank you.
I give you all very satisfied 5 stars for sure. Thank you so much. All right.
For having us. We thoroughly enjoyed this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.